Hey everybody, it's Josh Alexander from The Brokerage and your host of Orange County Housing Market News. On today's episode, I'm going to be answering one of the most common questions that I typically get during this time of year, and that is, should I place my house on the market during the winter months in Orange County? So if you're a returning subscriber, thank you so much for your continued support. I really appreciate it. If this is the first time you're checking out this channel is all about Orange County real estate. So I go over local trends happening in the market. I interview other experts in the field. And then especially if you're looking to buy or sell a home, I'll go over different tricks, tips, and advice for both buyers and sellers during each episode. So that way when you do get in the market, you're ready to hit the ground running. So make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and that bell button below if you're watching this on YouTube. So let's go ahead and get into today's episode. Okay, so for today's episode, we're going to break it down into 4 parts. So first, we're just going to look at some of the basics about selling your home in Orange County during the winter months. After that, we're going to go over some different things you can use to kind of determine if you should sell your house, and if so, when you should place it on the market during the winter. Next, we're going to talk about this year specifically. So we're going to go over some data about the 2021-22 housing market for the winter to make that decision a little bit easier for you. And then finally, if you do decide to sell your house during the winter, I do want to give you some tips at the very end to make sure that you're maximizing exposure and also getting the highest price, closing as quick as possible, and making the whole transaction go as smooth as you possibly can. So let's start with the most obvious thing about the winter housing market in Orange County, and that is we do see a dramatic decrease in both supply and demand during the winter months in Orange County. So the data backs that up as well. It shows that between November, December, and January, those 3 months make up the 3 months where we have the least amount of new homes hitting the market consistently almost every single year. So there's definitely a lot less inventory, a lot less demand during the holiday season, and that goes all the way through the end of February into March. However, one of the things that you do need to take into account when you are looking at the Orange County housing market compared maybe to the rest of the US, or at least most of it, is that our winters are a lot more mild here compared to a lot of the US. So the average temperature in December and January usually ranges in the very high 60s or low 70s. So the temperature and the weather here doesn't really impact the amount of people going out looking for homes, as well as the amount of people placing homes on the market, as much as it would as someplace like Denver or someplace that's getting snow for 3 or 4 months out of the year. So that's a great thing about the Orange County housing market, is there's always homes being sold. It stays active even during the winter season. We just have a little bit of a decrease in that supply and demand that will slow down the market just because the sheer number of transactions will be a little bit less than the rest of the year. Another thing you want to know about the winter market, especially when it comes to the buyer side, is really about their motivation. So typically, if buyers are out looking for homes during the winter months, that usually means they're going to be a little bit more motivated, whether their lease is about to expire or they need to be into a new home either by the end of the year or early next year. They typically have a little bit more motivation behind them to find a property and get into escrow as quick as possible. So it's good to kind of know the psyche of buyers going into the winter months that are continuing to try to find homes. And in terms of the escrow process, another great thing about the winter months is you usually have lenders that are less busy. When lenders are less busy, that means they can go through their files quicker, which means you can close quicker. So if you're a seller that needs to be able to close their home quickly, the winter months are a great time to do so because lenders are typically less busy and can spend more time on your file getting everything put together, ran through underwriting, and everything approved quicker than a lot of the months in the year, especially when you get into the spring and summer. So those are a few things you need to know about the typical winter months in Orange County. Again, if you're reading news articles about the national average and things like that, you really have to toss those out the window because you have to be able to find the local information and the local data to show what happens in the real estate market in Orange County versus the rest of the US, because it can vary widely, especially because of the weather. Okay, so that's some of the very basic information about selling a house in the winter months in Orange County. I know it's nothing groundbreaking, but it's good to have at least a little bit of that base knowledge to build off of when you're trying to figure out if you should sell or if you should wait. So speaking of, now let's say you're trying to really determine if you should sell your house during the winter or if you should wait a little while. Well, the easiest way to really break it down, in my opinion, is to kind of classify it into two different types of sellers. So you have one seller over here that needs to sell their house, but they're also needing to purchase another house at the same time. And then you have the other seller, which doesn't have anything to do on the back end. They just need to sell their house and be done with it. So let's break those down to figure out how to determine when to place your house on the market based on each of those two circumstances. So let's start with seller number one over here that needs to sell their house and buy another house at the same time. So really the biggest issue you're going to have in the winter market is not selling your house, but is finding another place to live. And that's a common fear that a lot of sellers have right now, especially in today's market, is that yes, I know I can sell my house. That's not going to be an issue. However, with inventory so limited, am I really going to be able to find another place to live? Well, the easiest way to really determine if finding another place to live is going to be an issue or not, and I know I've recommended this on previous episodes as well, but it works every time, is that you need to go into Zillow or something like that, set up some alerts for the house that you want to purchase and the area you want to purchase it, and take about a week or two to see how many homes pop up. If you're going through that search and maybe only one house pops up that meets your criteria per week, you know that you might have a difficult time trying to find a new home to move into if your house sells. However, if you go through and put that search criteria in and you're seeing 4, 5, 6 homes every week that will pop up that really meet that criteria you're looking for, then you can have a better understanding and feel a little bit more comfortable saying that I could probably find a house to get into escrow with if I decide to place my house on the market. So that's a really easy way to test to figure out if you're going to be able to sell and buy another home at the same time, is doing that research and kind of seeing what's out there and how often those homes are popping up for you. If you don't see a lot of homes, it might be better for you to wait until those search results start popping up more and more often, where you feel more confident about placing your house on the market and that you're able to find a new property to live in once your house sells. So let's go look at the other side. So now let's say that you don't need to find another property, you just want to sell your house. So because you're not really concerned about the future market, really all you have to do is just look at what the current supply, the current demand is right now, and what the current days on market are. So you just want to understand how many buyers are out there in the market. You want to understand when you place your house on the market at fair market value, about how long it will take to close, and that way you can kind of plan accordingly. Other than that, that's really all you need to know about when you decide to place your house on the market if you have nothing else to buy on the back end. So it's a pretty simple process. So speaking of what the current market is doing, now let's go ahead and dive into what this year's winter housing market looks like in Orange County to give you a better idea if selling a house will be ideal for you in this market this year, or if you should wait a little while longer. So right now, demand is still sky high. Interest rates are still hovering right around that 3.1%. They've been stuck at that for almost 2 months now, which is an extremely attractive interest rate for buyers. So it's keeping a lot of buyers in the market, even during the holiday season, because they want to take advantage of it, because they're probably reading more and more articles now about how next year interest rates are expected to rise. So a lot of buyers are trying to take advantage of those interest rates while they still can. So now let's go ahead and look at the supply side of things. So it probably won't shock you to hear that right now we have an extreme lack of inventory in the Orange County housing market. Right now there's just a little bit more than 1,200 homes for the entire Orange County housing market that are active on the market at this point. Just to give you some historic perspective, typically at the end of December, we hover right around 5,000 homes for Orange County active on the market. So you can see that we have an extremely low supply of homes. We're going to be going into next year with the lowest supply ever recorded for homes in Orange County, which obviously means at this point we're in an extremely hot seller's market. So you can expect that if you place a house on the market right now at fair market value, and anything up to about $2 million at this point, that you'll get offers on it and you'll most likely get into escrow within 2 weeks, because there's so many buyers that are lining up right now and there's just not enough supply to be able to satisfy all the demand that currently exists in Orange County for almost any price home at this point, even on the luxury side. So now let's go back to those two types of sellers that I referenced earlier. So if you're in that category where you need to sell your house and buy another house at the same time, you might be thinking to yourself right now, there's just not enough inventory out there. I'm not going to be able to find a place. I don't want to put my house on the market. Well, two things. One, make sure you run that test. Put that information into Zillow or talk to your agent, have them set up an MLS feed for you so you can see how many of those homes that you are actually interested in are hitting the market each way, because that's ultimately still the best way to determine whether or not you're going to be able to get into another property when yours sells. So really quickly, before we get into the last section where I go over some tips for the sellers that are placing their homes on the market during the winter months, I do want to bring up one more point. So if you are a seller that is purchasing another home on the back end, and you might be thinking to yourself at this point that, well, demand is extremely high, supply is low, that means we're going to have appreciation over the next couple months, so maybe I'll just wait a little while longer before I place my house on the market just to take advantage of every ounce of appreciation I can get. Now, although I understand that thinking, the one caution that I do have is that at this point, it's a pretty widely held belief by most housing economists that we're going to see interest rates rise next year. So it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when and by how much. So one thing that you do have to take into account as a possible risk is if you wait too long and interest rates start climbing, you might make an extra $10,000, $20,000 at the sale of your home, but if interest rates go up by even 0.2%, by the end of that 30-year loan that you have on your new house, you could be spending tens of thousands of dollars more on your loan because interest rates went up. So it is something you want to be factoring into your decision on when you want to place your house on the market. So it's kind of a balancing act. You want to be able to find the best time to place it on the market, to be able to know that you have other options out there for the home that you want to purchase. However, you don't want to wait too long just in case interest rates do rise. So financially, you're not shooting yourself in the foot, paying more every single month for the new home that you're trying to purchase. So that is definitely something you want to take into consideration. And if you want some more strategies on how to buy and sell a home at the same time without running into issues of selling a house and then not having some place to live because you couldn't find a new home fast enough, check out the video up here in the corner. It's a two-part series. I go over how to buy and sell a home at the same time and all the different things inside contracts that you can do as both a buyer and a seller to protect yourself, to make sure that you're only moving once and that you're not committing to buy another property until you know your house is going to sell. And that gets a lot of the risk out of the way, and that way it gives you a bit more flexibility of when you want to place your house on the market. So make sure you check that out if that's something that you're thinking of doing. So now let's go ahead and get to some of the tips that you need to be doing as a seller placing your house on the market during the winter in Orange County. Okay, so tip number one is think light and bright. So during the winter months, we have the least amount of light out of any time during the year, which means you have the highest likelihood that buyers are going to walk through your house in non-ideal conditions in terms of the lighting. So you need to go through the inside of your house, make sure every light fixture works. Go on the outside of the house, do the same thing. Inside the house, if you have a really dark color paint, it might be worth talking to a painter, getting some quotes, and having the interior of that house painted a nice bright color. That way, when a buyer walks in, it feels open, it feels new, it feels bright, and it's just going to give them a much better first impression than walking in and feeling immediately closed in. So you want to make sure you're doing everything you can just to make it feel as bright as possible during these winter months. So tip number two is that if you're placing your house on the market that week of Christmas or anytime after that, you really want to make sure that you're de-decorating your house before those photos are taken. So the worst thing you can do is that have those photos taken, and then the very end of December, early January, buyers are going on the website, checking it out, and it's still decorated like Christmas. That's an easy indication that the house has been on the market for a while, and that's really going to drive buyers away from your property. So if you're thinking about placing your house on the market towards the back half of December or anytime after that, make sure that you de-decorate before those photos are taken. Or if you can plan ahead, what you can also do is have the photographer out there before you decorate for the holiday season, just so you have a blank slate in terms of the photos you're using. They're not personalized by the holiday, and that way they can be used at any time period, and it gives you more flexibility. So just make sure that you have that in your head if you're placing your home on the market during the holiday season, so that way you don't run into issues later on. So tip number three, so on top of those de-decorated photos, you also want to make sure you're talking to your agent and have them order a 3D Matterport tour of your house. So although we don't get a lot of bad weather in Southern California during winter, we do get the rainstorms here and there. This year I feel like we've had a little bit more, especially in December, than we usually get. So it's always a good idea to be able to have buyers access and view your properties in multiple different ways. So if they want to go through and click through and check the ceilings, the floor, see the general general layout of the house. They're able to do that online from the comfort of the home. So if it's a rainy day or a rainy weekend, they miss the open house, they can still get a really good idea of the condition of the house, the location, as well as the general layout. And that's just going to end up giving you more eyeballs on your property, ultimately more offers and a higher price for your home. So make sure that you talk to your agent, get one of those 3D Matterport tours on any home that you sell, really whether it's winter or not, but especially during winter, because anytime you can get more information to the buyer, the better it's going to be for you. Okay, so tip number 4. Now let's go ahead and say that you don't want to de-decorate your house. You spent a lot of effort, a lot of time decorating it. It's not practical for you to take it all down, take photos, and then put it all back up. If you are going to have holiday decor in your house, you just want to make sure that it's not overbearing. So you don't want to walk in and feel like you've gone to the North Pole. You want to have things that are a little bit more minimal, so it's not going to be overwhelming for the buyer as soon as they walk in. And that's the same thing for scent. So a lot of people like to burn like apple pie or some kind of pine scent during the holidays in their house. Feel free to do that. It might make the buyer feel more at home. However, you don't want to overdo that. I've been to plenty of open houses where there's a candle lit in every single room. Not only will that turn some buyers off from your property just from the smell alone, but you also are going to have buyers out there that are thinking, what are you hiding? Why do you have candles in every single room? Is there some bigger issue that you don't want us to know about that you're trying to hide with all this scent? So if you are going to decorate, just make sure you don't over decorate your house. And if you are going to use scent, just use maybe 1, 2 at the most candles throughout your property, and that way it's not overbearing for anybody that walks through the house. So tip number 5 is that curb appeal is still very important no matter what time of year it is. So you just want to make sure that if you have leaves in the front of your yard, you're making sure that they're raked on a daily basis. If you have mud patches in your front or backyard, you're taking care of that, because you don't want the first impression that buyers see when they walk up to your property is mud puddles here, leaves that haven't been raked in a month there. It's just not a good first impression to have. You want to make sure that you manicure your yard front and back as much as you can during the holiday season, as well as throughout the whole year, but definitely during the holiday season to make sure that first impression is always going to be a good one. So the 6th and final tip I have for you as a seller during the holiday season is make sure you talk to your agent about getting some shoe booties at the front of your door, so that way if it's muddy or it's rainy outside, there's some way to protect the flooring of your house. The last thing you want is a bunch of buyers walking through your house, creating mud prints everywhere they go, and then either you have to go clean that up, pay someone to clean it up, and then every buyer that walks in after that, before it's cleaned up, sees how messy it is. It's something you just don't want to deal with. So make sure that you have those shoe booties, or if you don't, make sure you have a sign asking anybody that enters the house to take off their shoes at the front door, just to make sure everything stays clean, eliminate a lot of headaches on your end of having to continuing to clean the floor, and just makes the whole process run smoother. So make sure you have that set in place before your first open houses and before your first showings. So I hope you found that information useful. Again, if you did like this information, please hit that like, subscribe, and the bell button below. That way each week you're notified when I release a new episode. And until next time, stay healthy, stay happy, and I'll see you on the next show. Bye.